The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystal cities of Kepler 442b. Hyunwoo Kim stood on his balcony, watching the Vellani workers move through their daily routines. Their bodies caught the light like living diamonds, each step creating tiny rainbow reflections on the ground below. Hyunwoo had lived on this world for 20 years now. He came here as a young scientist, eager to study the Vellani people. What he found was so much more than research data. The Vellani built their cities in harmony with nature. They grew their homes from the living crystal that formed naturally on their planet. They never fought wars or harmed their environment. They were everything humanity could learn to become. The Vellani leader, Taemin, approached the balcony. His 7-foot frame moved with grace despite his crystalline body. His skin shimmered with colors that changed with his emotions. Today, those colors were dark and worried. "Hyunwoo, my friend," Taemin said in his deep musical voice. "We need to talk." Hyunwoo turned from the view. He had learned to read Vellani expressions over the years. The way Taemin's crystal spines lay flat against his neck meant serious trouble. "What's wrong?" Taemin held out his hand. In his palm sat a small piece of crystal that should have been clear and bright. Instead, it looked sick. The crystal was gray and full of cracks. "This came from the Eastern Mining District this morning. 3 workers fell ill yesterday. Their crystal skin began to change, just like this." Hyunwoo took the crystal sample. It felt wrong in his hands, like holding a piece of death. "Have you seen anything like this before?" "Never," Taemin replied. "Our healers are confused. Our scientists have no answers. The workers who fell sick, they are getting worse. Their crystal skin is becoming brittle. Some pieces have already fallen off." A chill ran down Hyunwoo's spine. The Vellani were made of living crystal. Their bodies were both organic and mineral at the same time. If their crystal skin was failing, it meant they were dying in a way that should be impossible. "I need to see them," Hyunwoo said. They walked together through the crystal streets toward the medical center. Other Vellani stopped to stare as they passed. Word was already spreading. In a community of only 50,000, news traveled fast. The medical center was a beautiful building that grew from the ground like a flower made of blue crystal. Inside, 3 Vellani lay on beds of soft, living moss. Hyunwoo had never seen sick Vellani before. The sight made his heart ache. The first patient was a young Vellani named Jiwoo. Her crystal skin, which should have been a beautiful pale green, was now gray and cracking. Pieces had fallen off her arms, leaving raw, weeping wounds underneath. She looked up at Hyunwoo with eyes that still held their crystal shine but were filled with fear. "It doesn't hurt," Jiwoo whispered. "That's the worst part. I can't feel the pieces falling off. I only know when I see them on the ground." The second patient was in worse shape. Large sections of crystal had fallen from his torso. The third patient could barely speak. His crystal throat was too damaged to make proper sounds. Hyunwoo spent hours taking samples and running tests. His equipment was good, but it was human technology. It wasn't designed to study Vellani biology. Still, he had to try. By evening, he had preliminary results. The news was bad. "It's some kind of plague," he told Taemin and the gathered Vellani leaders. "Something is attacking the crystal matrix that holds your bodies together. It's breaking down the bonds that keep the crystal alive and connected to your organic parts." "Can you cure it?" asked Sujin, a young Vellani who worked as a liaison between her people and the few humans on the planet. Hyunwoo shook his head sadly. "This is beyond my knowledge. I've never seen anything like it. You need specialists. You need the best scientists in the galaxy." Taemin's colors shifted to a deep blue of determination. "Then we will ask for help." That night, Hyunwoo sent out distress signals across the galaxy. He used every communication channel he could access. He sent messages to the Galactic Federation, the Zephyrian Empire, the Altarian Republic, and the Centauri Collective. He explained the situation. He begged for help. He offered to pay any price for medical assistance. The first response came from the Galactic Federation 12 hours later. It was brief and cold. Situation noted. Medical team dispatched for evaluation. Hope filled the Villani community. Help was coming. 3 days later, a Federation medical ship arrived in orbit. Hyunwoo and Taemin waited at the spaceport as a shuttle landed. Out stepped Dr. Vextar, a tall, gray-skinned alien with 4 arms and cold, black eyes. Dr. Vextar spent exactly 2 hours on the planet. He took samples from the sick Villani. He ran scans of the crystal cities. He spoke to no one except his medical team. When he was done, he called Hyunwoo and Taemin to his shuttle. This disease is unknown to Federation science, Dr. Vextar announced. It appears to be highly contagious and specific to crystal-based life forms. There is significant risk of spread to other species. Can you help us? Taemin asked. Dr. Vextar's expression never changed. The Federation Medical Council has declared this world a contamination zone. No ships will be permitted to land. No medical supplies will be sent. This planet is under permanent quarantine. But our people are dying, Sujin cried out. That is unfortunate, Dr. Vextar replied. But we cannot risk the spread of this plague to other worlds. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. The shuttle lifted off, leaving them standing in the dust. Over the next week, more responses came in. Each one was the same. The Zephyrians sent a message saying they were monitoring the situation. The Altarians offered their thoughts and prayers, but no actual help. The Centauri Collective, known for their compassion, simply never replied. By the end of the second week, 20 more Villani had fallen sick. The plague was spreading faster. Now entire families were affected. The crystal cities began to look empty as healthy Villani stayed indoors, hoping to avoid infection. Hyunwoo watched from his balcony as Sujin walked through the empty streets below. She was one of the few Villani still healthy enough to move around freely. She was also one of the few who still had hope. Any word from the galaxy? She called up to him. Hyunwoo looked at the communication console beside him. It showed dozens of outgoing messages and only automated replies. The galaxy had made its choice. The Villani were alone. No, he called back, no one is coming. That night, Taemin came to visit Hyunwoo one last time. The great leader's crystal skin was beginning to show the first gray patches of the plague. He had been hiding it for days, trying to keep hope alive among his people. My friend, Taemin said, his voice already beginning to crack. I need you to send one final message. To whom? Hyunwoo asked. To your people, to Earth. We have been abandoned by the galaxy. But perhaps humanity might be different. Hyunwoo looked out at the dying crystal cities one more time. Then he sat down at his communication console and began typing a message to Earth. It was their last hope. Director Jae-hyun Lee sat in his office on Earth, watching the morning news. The reporters were talking about trade agreements and political meetings. Nothing about dying aliens on a distant world. Nothing about plagues or quarantines. The galaxies, news networks had decided the Villani weren't worth mentioning. His communication console beeped. A priority message from deep space. Jae-hyun frowned. The Human Colonial Defense Corps rarely got messages from outside human territory. Most alien species still saw humans as newcomers who didn't matter much in galactic politics. He opened the message and began reading. The words made his blood run cold. A plague was killing an entire species. The galaxy had turned its back on them. They were asking humans for help as their last hope. Jae-hyun read the message 3 times. Then he called his assistant. Get me a meeting with the Earth Council. Emergency session. Also find Dr. Min-seo Choi. Tell her I need to see her immediately. 2 hours later, Jae-hyun stood before the Earth Council. 12 representatives from different regions of Earth sat in a semicircle, looking skeptical. They were used to dealing with human problems. Alien diseases were not their area. You want to risk our relationship with the major powers? Asked Councillor Park from the Asian Federation. We've worked for decades to gain respect in galactic politics. One wrong move could set us back generations. These Villani are dying, Jae-hyun replied. They've asked for our help because no one else will give it. That should tell us something, said Counselor Johnson from the Americas. If species with thousands of years of medical knowledge won't help, what makes you think we can? Because we're human, Jae-hyun answered simply. Because it's the right thing to do. The debate went on for hours. Some council members worried about the cost. Others feared making enemies of powerful alien governments. A few questioned whether humans had any business getting involved in alien affairs. Dr. Min Seo Choi arrived during the lunch break. She was a small woman with intense eyes and graying hair. She had spent her career studying alien biology, though most of her work was theoretical. Humans had limited contact with other species. "Show me the data," she said to Jae-hyun. They went to his office and pulled up Hyun-woo's medical files. "Doctor." Min Seo studied the information carefully. She asked detailed questions about Volani biology. She made notes on her tablet. After an hour, she leaned back in her chair. "This is fascinating," she said. "I've never seen anything like it. The way their crystal matrix integrates with organic tissue is unique in known biology." "Can we help them?" Jae-hyun asked. Dr. Min Seo was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know, but I have to try. When I became a scientist, I swore to use my knowledge to help all life, not just human life." That afternoon, the Earth Council voted. It was close, but they approved the mission by a single vote. Counselor Kim from the Korean Peninsula cast the deciding ballot. "My grandmother always told me that helping strangers was the mark of good character," she said. "I see no reason why that should change, just because these strangers have crystal skin." Within hours, Dr. Min Seo began assembling her team. She called Captain Ji-ho Nam, commander of the experimental vessel New Horizon. Ji-ho was young for a captain, but he was brave and smart. He also believed in doing the right thing even when it was dangerous. "Are you sure about this?" Ji-ho asked when she explained the mission. "The other species avoided this planet for good reasons. What if the plague spreads to humans? Then we'll deal with that when it happens," Dr. Min Seo replied. "But we can't let fear stop us from helping people who need us." Chief Medical Officer Young Hee-song volunteered immediately. She had worked with Dr. Min Seo before and trusted her judgment. Engineer Bo Ram Shin signed up because she was curious about alien technology. The entire crew of the New Horizon agreed to go, even though they knew the risks. Admiral Hai Wan-jung made the decision that shocked everyone. She committed the entire human defense fleet to the mission, all 12 ships. It was every military vessel Earth could spare. "We're the youngest species in galactic politics," she told the assembled captains. "Most aliens still think we're primitive, but maybe being new means we haven't learned to be afraid of doing what's right." The fleet took 3 days to prepare. They loaded medical supplies, scientific equipment, and emergency food rations. Dr. Min Seo worked around the clock, studying everything known about crystal-based life forms. It wasn't much. Young Hee gathered medicines that might work on alien biology. Most human drugs were useless for other species, but some basic treatments might help. Bo Ram checked the ship's systems twice. The New Horizon was designed for exploration, not medical emergencies. On the morning of departure, families gathered at the spaceports to say goodbye. Many of the crew members were leaving loved ones behind. They didn't know if they would come. Barty Captain Ji-ho stood on the bridge of the New Horizon as Earth fell away behind them. 11 other ships followed in formation. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever sent beyond their own solar system. "How long to reach Kepler 442b?" he asked his navigator. 14 days at maximum speed," came the reply. "Then we'd better hope we're not too late." The journey was tense. Every day brought new messages from Earth. Some politicians were having second thoughts. They worried about the cost of the mission. They worried about alien reactions. They wanted the fleet to come home. Admiral Haewon's response was always the same. "We gave our word. Humans don't break promises." Dr. Min Seo spent the journey studying and planning. She read every report from Hyun-woo. She analyzed the plague's progression. She tried to understand how Volani biology worked. The more she learned, the more worried she became. "This isn't natural," she told Captain Ji-ho on the 10th day of their journey. Diseases don't usually target specific biological structures this precisely. Someone created this plague. Who would do such a thing? Jiho asked. Someone who wanted the Villani gone, Dr. Minseo replied grimly. On the 13th day, they received a message from Yunwu. The situation was getting worse. Half the Villani population was now infected. The crystal cities were falling apart as their builders died or became too sick to maintain them. Hurry, the message said. I don't know how much longer they have. Captain Jiho pushed the engines beyond safe limits. The other ships followed his lead. The human defense fleet raced toward a dying world, hoping they would arrive in time to make a difference. Young He prepared the medical bay for massive casualties. She didn't know if her equipment would work on Villani, but she would try everything she could. Boram ran diagnostics on all systems. If they had to evacuate Villani from the planet, the ships would be overloaded. She needed to make sure everything worked perfectly. Dr. Minseo stared out at the stars and wondered if they were doing the right thing. The galaxy's greatest medical minds had declared the Villani hopeless. What made her think she could succeed where they had failed? But as she looked at the determined faces of her human colleagues, she felt hope. Humans were newcomers to the galaxy. They were considered primitive by ancient alien civilizations. But they had something that the older species seemed to have lost: the willingness to risk everything for strangers. Maybe that's what being human means, she thought to herself. Maybe that's our gift to the galaxy. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. Ahead of them lay a beautiful blue and green world surrounded by crystal orbital stations. But the stations were dark and empty. No ships moved between them. The planet looked peaceful, but Dr. Minseo knew that appearance was deceiving. Take us in, Captain Jiho ordered. Let's see what we can do. As the human fleet approached Kepler 442b, they had no idea that their arrival would change everything. They were about to discover that sometimes the smallest voice in the galaxy could speak the loudest truth. The human fleet came out of hyperspace to find a world in agony. Captain Jiho Nam stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, looking down at Kepler 442b. The planet should have been beautiful, with crystal cities shining like jewels across the continents. Instead, many of the cities were dark. The orbital stations hung silent and empty in space. Life signs? Jiho asked his science officer. Reading approximately 22,000 Villani, came the reply, down from 50,000 when the first distress call was sent. The numbers hit everyone on the bridge like a physical blow. More than half the Villani population was already dead. Dr. Minseo Choi felt her stomach twist. She had hoped they would arrive in time to save most of the population. Instead, they were watching a species die in real time. Take us down, she said quietly. Every minute we waste up here means more deaths down there. The New Horizon landed near the largest crystal city. The other human ships spread out across the planet, bringing medical teams to different population centers. As the landing ramps lowered, Dr. Minseo got her first look at the dying world. Hyunwoo Kim was waiting for them. The human scientist looked 20 years older than his age. His hair had gone completely gray, and his eyes held a sadness that seemed to weigh on his entire body. Thank you for coming, he said, gripping Dr. Minseo's hand tightly. I didn't think anyone would answer our call. We're here now, Dr. Minseo replied. Show me the patients. The medical center was a horror. Dozens of Villani lay on beds of dying moss. Their crystal skin was cracked and falling apart. Some had lost entire limbs. Others could barely speak through damaged crystal throats. Dr. Minseo moved from bed to bed, taking readings with her medical scanner. The device had been modified to work on Villani biology, but the readings made little sense. The plague was unlike anything in human medical databases. Tae Min, the Villani leader, approached slowly. Half his face was covered in gray, cracked crystal. When he spoke, his voice sounded like breaking glass. Are you here to help us die with dignity? He asked. Or do you truly believe you can save us? I don't know yet, Dr. Minseo answered honestly. But I'm going to try everything I can. She set up her mobile laboratory in the center of the medical facility. Young Hee-song began examining patients with equipment designed for human medicine. It wasn't perfect, but some readings were better than none. For 3 days, they worked without rest. Dr. Minseo analyzed tissue samples. She studied the plague's structure. She ran computer models of how it attacked Villani biology. Everything she learned made the situation seem more hopeless. On the 4th day, disaster struck. Yoon Young Ko, one of the human medical technicians, collapsed during her shift. When Dr. Min Seo examined her, she found the impossible. Yoon Young was developing a modified version of the crystal blight. How is this possible? Young Hee asked as they stared at the gray patches spreading across Yoon Young's arms. Humans don't have crystal biology. Dr. Min Seo ran more tests. The results were terrifying. The plague was adapting. It was learning to attack human tissue by converting it into a crystal-like substance, then destroying it. This explains why the galaxy abandoned them, she said grimly. The plague can spread to any species. Given enough time, it learns to kill anything alive. Captain Ji-ho Nam received the news in his temporary command center. He immediately called a meeting of all human personnel on the planet. Anyone who wants to leave can go, he announced. No one will think less of you. This disease is more dangerous than we thought. Not a single human left. We came here to help, said Engineer Bo-ram. Shin, finding out it's dangerous doesn't change that. Dr. Minseo worked even harder, knowing that human lives were now at stake too. She studied Yoon Young's condition alongside Villani patients. She looked for patterns. She searched for weaknesses in the plague. On the 7th day, she made a breakthrough. While analyzing the plague's genetic structure, she discovered something strange. Parts of the disease's code were too organized, too purposeful. Natural diseases evolved randomly. This plague had been designed. It's a bioweapon, she told Captain Ji-ho. Someone created this plague specifically to kill crystal-based life forms. But they made it adaptable so it could spread to other species if needed. Who would do such a thing? Ji-ho asked. Before Dr. Min Seo could answer, Communications Officer Da-eun Park burst into the command center. Captain, you need to hear this, she said, activating a holographic display. I've been monitoring long-range communications. I intercepted this transmission from the edge of the system. A harsh alien voice filled the room. Hegemony Command, this is Fleet Commander In-ho Kang. Plague deployment was successful. Villani population reduced by 73%. Minimal galactic. Response as predicted. Requesting permission to begin final cleansing operations. The response came quickly. Permission granted, Commander. Eliminate all remaining life on target world. Mineral extraction operations will begin immediately afterward. The transmission ended, leaving the humans in stunned silence. They did this, Dr. Min Seo whispered. The hegemony of Vex created the plague to wipe out the Villani. They want the planet's mineral deposits. Captain Ji-ho felt rage burning in his chest. How long before their fleet arrives? Da-eun checked her readings. Based on the transmission delay, I'd say 48 hours. Tactical Officer Sang-min Lee pulled up star charts on his console. The hegemony has one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. Their ships are faster and better armed than ours. If they send a full battle group, we won't stand a chance. Captain Ji-ho looked around at his officers. These were good people who had volunteered for a medical mission. They had signed up to save lives, not fight a war. He could order the fleet to retreat. No one would blame them. But as he thought about the dying Villani in the medical center, about Taemin's cracked voice asking if they were just here to help his people die with dignity, Ji-ho made his choice. Send a message to all human ships, he ordered. Any ship that wants to retreat to safety can go now. For those who stay, we're going to make a stand. One by one, the human captains responded. Not a single ship left. Dr. Min Seo continued working. On a cure. But now she was racing against time in a different way. The hegemony fleet would arrive before she could save everyone. But maybe, just maybe, she could save some. She shared her research with the Villani scientists who were still healthy enough to work. Together, they began developing treatments that might slow the plague's progress. It wasn't a cure, but it might buy them more time. Sujin Park, the young Villani liaison, became Dr. Minseo's constant companion. Despite the gray patches beginning to appear on her own crystal skin, she translated between human and Villani medical terminology. She helped coordinate treatment schedules. She gave hope to patients who had given up. "Why are you doing this?" Sujin asked Dr. Minseo during a brief rest break. "Your people barely know us. We have nothing to offer you in return." Dr. Minseo looked out the window at the human ships preparing for battle. "Because it's right," she said simply. "Because everyone deserves someone to stand with them when they're in trouble." As the second day passed, more humans fell sick with the adapted plague, but they kept working. Young He treated Villani patients even as gray patches spread up her own arms. Boram repaired medical equipment with hands that were slowly turning to cracked crystal. Captain Jiho spent his time preparing for battle. His ships were explorers and transports, not warships. But Engineer Boram had some creative ideas about turning mining equipment into weapons. If they were going to make a stand, they would use everything they had. On the morning of the third day, long-range sensors detected the hegemony fleet dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. 12 massive warships, each one larger and more powerful than the entire human fleet combined. "This is it," Captain Jiho announced over the fleet communication system. "Today we find out what it really means to be human." Dr. Minseo looked up from her laboratory as the ships began moving toward battle positions. She had made progress on understanding the plague, but she was nowhere near a cure. Too many people were going to die. But as she watched Human and Villani working side by side in the medical center, she realized something important. Win or lose, they had already changed something fundamental. They had refused to abandon people in need. They had chosen to stand together against impossible odds. The galaxy had declared the Villani worthless and left them to die. But humanity had declared something different. "We stand with you." Now it was time to see if that declaration meant anything when the shooting started. Fleet Commander In-Ho Kang stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical display with amusement. 12 small ships hung in orbit around Kepler 442b, arranged in what humans probably thought was a defensive formation. "Analysis?" he asked his tactical officer. "Primitive vessels, Commander. Exploration ships mostly. Minimal weapons. Their largest vessel is smaller than our escort frigates." In-Ho Kang's scaled face twisted into what might have been a smile. The hegemony had expected to find a dead world, ready for mining operations. Instead, they found this pathetic display of defiance. "Who are they?" he asked. "Human ships, sir. Earth Registry. We're receiving a transmission from their lead vessel." "Put it through." Captain Jiho Nam's image appeared on the screen. He looked young and determined, standing straight despite facing impossible odds. "This is Captain Nam of the Earthship New Horizon," Jiho said. "You are ordered to leave this system immediately. These people are under human protection." In-Ho. Kang actually laughed out loud. "Human protection? Your species has been in space for what, 50 years? You have no authority here, child." "We have the authority that comes from doing what's right," Jiho replied. "You created a plague to murder innocent people. You're war criminals, and we won't let you finish the job." The hegemony commander's amusement faded. How had these primitives learned about the bioweapon? "Stand aside, humans. This world belongs to the hegemony now. Leave and you may go home to your families." "No," Jiho said simply. "We're not leaving." In-Ho Kang cut the transmission. "Destroy them," he ordered his fleet. The battle began immediately. Hegemony warships opened fire with weapons that could crack planets. Their plasma cannons lit up space with deadly energy. The human ships scattered, using their superior maneuverability to avoid the heavy weapons. Captain Jiho had studied the enemy ships during their approach. Hegemony vessels were powerful but slow, designed for overwhelming firepower rather than precision combat. "Evasive maneuvers," Jiho ordered. "Make them work for every shot." Through me, New Horizon danced between plasma blasts, her hull heating up from near misses. Around her, the other human ships did the same, turning the battle into a deadly game of tag. Engineer Boram Shin had spent the last 3 days preparing for this moment. She had converted mining explosives into improvised weapons. She had rigged cargo containers to explode when hit by enemy fire. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Deploying mining charges, Boram reported as her ship dropped a string of explosives in the path of an approaching hegemony cruiser. The charges weren't powerful enough to destroy the alien ship, but they damaged its shields and sensors. Pilot Kyung-Soo Yoon flew his fighter like a man possessed. His tiny ship darted between the massive enemy vessels, drawing their fire away from the larger human ships. His voice crackled over the communication system. These ships are too big to target fighters effectively. I can distract them, but not for long. The human fleet was giving everything they had, but it wasn't enough. One by one, their ships were taking critical damage. The transport vessel Soul Star lost her engines and began falling toward the planet. The medical ship Healing Hand was hit by a plasma cannon and exploded in a ball of fire. Captain Ji-ho watched his people die and felt his heart breaking. They had come here to save lives, not throw them away in a hopeless battle. But they couldn't abandon the Volani. They had given their word. New Horizon, this is Admiral Jung, came a transmission from Earth. The human fleet's overall commander had stayed behind to coordinate with Earth's government, but her voice reached them across the galaxy. You have permission to retreat, you've done enough. Negative, Admiral, Ji-ho replied. We're not leaving these people. Down on the planet, Dr. Min-seo Choi worked frantically in her laboratory, while explosions lit up the sky above. The vibrations from orbital bombardment made her equipment shake. Some of her delicate instruments were knocked out of alignment. She had been working on the plague for days now, studying its structure and looking for weaknesses. The breakthrough had come just hours ago, but it seemed like a cruel joke. She had found the cure just in time to watch everyone die in battle. The cure was sound. Specific harmonic frequencies could disrupt the plague's molecular structure, but the frequency had to be precise, and it had to be sustained for hours to completely eliminate the disease from a patient's body. It's impossible, she muttered, watching her computer calculate the requirements. We'd need massive speakers playing the exact tone for days. We don't have that kind of equipment. Soo Jin Park limped into the laboratory. Half her crystal face was now gray and cracking, but her eyes still held hope. Dr. Choi, she said urgently. The Cultural Center. We have traditional instruments there, harmonic crystals that can produce pure tones. Dr. Min-seo looked up from her computer. What kind of instruments? The Geiagium, Soo Jin explained. It's a human instrument that some of our people learned to play, a stringed instrument that produces very precise harmonics. We have several in the Cultural Center. Doctor, Min-seo felt her heart racing. It might work. The Geiagium could produce the exact frequency she needed. If they could get enough instruments working together, they could broadcast the healing tone across the entire planet. Can you get me there? She asked. Above them, the battle was reaching its climax. The human fleet had been reduced to 8 ships. Captain Ji-ho's New Horizon was badly damaged, her shields failing and her hull cracked in a dozen places. But something unexpected was happening. The hegemony ships, designed for quick, overwhelming attacks, were having trouble with the humans' unpredictable tactics. The human pilots fought like they had nothing to lose, using maneuvers that risked their own lives to damage the enemy. Pilot Kyung-Soo Yoon made the ultimate sacrifice. His fighter was damaged and losing power, but he saw an opportunity. A hegemony cruiser had opened its launch bay to deploy more fighters. Kyung-Soo aimed his dying ship at the opening. For the Volani, he said over the radio, and flew his fighter directly into the enemy ship's hangar. The explosion tore through the cruiser's interior, destroying half its weapon systems. The sacrifice gave the remaining human ships a chance. They concentrated their fire on the damaged cruiser, finally achieving something they never thought possible. They destroyed a hegemony warship. Fleet Commander In-ho Kang stared at the tactical display in disbelief. These primitive humans had actually destroyed one of his ships. It should have been impossible. All ships focus fire on their flagship, he ordered angrily. End this farce. 4 hegemony warships turned their weapons on the new horizon. Captain Jiho knew his ship couldn't survive that much firepower. He was about to give the order to abandon ship when something miraculous happened. Music filled the communication channels. Beautiful, haunting music unlike anything the humans had ever heard. It was coming from the planet below. Dr. Minseo had reached the cultural center. She had found 6 Gaiagium instruments and convinced 6 Villani musicians to play them, even though they were dying from the plague. Together they created the precise harmonic frequency needed to cure the crystal blight. But the music did something else too. The harmonic frequency didn't just heal Villani biology. It resonated with the crystal structures that powered their cities and their orbital stations. All across Kepler 442b, crystal cities began to glow. The orbital stations that had been dark and dead suddenly blazed with light. The planet's defense systems, powered by living crystal, came back online. Energy weapons built into the orbital stations opened fire on the hegemony fleet. The aliens had expected to face only primitive human ships. They weren't prepared for the planet itself to fight back. 3 more hegemony ships were destroyed in the first few seconds. The rest scattered, trying to escape the unexpected defensive fire. Fleet Commander Inho Kang's flagship was hit by multiple energy beams. His ship's shields failed, and his hull began to crack. "Retreat," he ordered. "All ships, retreat." Gator. Surviving hegemony vessels fled toward the edge of the system, leaving behind the wreckage of half their fleet. Captain Jiho couldn't believe what he was seeing. They had won. Against impossible odds, humans and Villani had stood together and won. Down on the planet, Dr. Minseo watched her medical scanners with growing excitement. The Gaiagium music was working. All across the planet, Villani were beginning to heal. The gray patches were fading from their crystal skin. The plague was dying. Tai Min approached her, his face now clear and bright again. The great Villani leader knelt before the human doctor. "You saved us," he said, his voice no longer cracked and broken. "Your people saved us when the entire galaxy abandoned us." Dr. Minseo helped him stand. "We're not done yet," she said. "We need to make sure this never happens again." As the music continued to play and the healing spread across the world, both species realized that something fundamental had changed. Humans had proven that being young and small didn't mean being weak or unimportant. The Villani had learned that they weren't alone in the universe. Together, they had stood against the darkness, and won. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. At first, most people didn't believe it. Humans, the youngest and weakest species in galactic politics, had defeated a hegemony battle fleet. Impossible. But the evidence was undeniable. Wreckage from hegemony warships floated in orbit around Kepler 442b. Recordings of the battle spread through underground communication networks. Most shocking of all, the Villani were alive and healthy. War correspondent So Young Choi had been on Earth when she heard the first reports. She immediately commandeered the fastest ship she could find and raced to Kepler 442b. What she found there would change galactic politics forever. "This is So Young Choi reporting from the surface of Kepler 442b, she began her broadcast. Behind, her crystal cities gleamed in the sunlight, fully restored and more beautiful than ever. 3 weeks ago, this world was dying from a plague that the entire galaxy had written off as hopeless. Today, thanks to human intervention, the Villani people are not only alive, but thriving. Her broadcast reached every major world in the galaxy. For the first time, people learned the truth about what had happened. The Galactic Federation had known about the hegemony's bioweapon. They had covered it up to avoid confronting a powerful military force. They had left an entire species to die rather than risk political complications. The reaction was immediate and explosive. On worlds across the galaxy, protests erupted. Citizens demanded answers from their governments. How could they claim to be civilized while abandoning innocent people to genocide? The insectoid Chirathi were the first to respond. Their hive mind. Civilization rarely involved itself in galactic politics. but they sent a message of support to both Earth and Kepler 442b. Within hours, a Kirathi medical ship arrived to offer assistance with ongoing recovery efforts. The aquatic Nautilians followed quickly. Their deep-sea cities had always been isolated from galactic affairs, but they too were moved by humanity's sacrifice. They sent engineers to help rebuild the damaged orbital stations. Dozens of smaller species, the ones that major powers usually ignored, began sending aid. The crystalline singers contributed harmonic technology. The silicon shepherds offered mineral processing equipment. The photosynthetic communes provided food that could sustain both human and Volani biology. Ambassador Moonyoung Park found herself at the center of an unprecedented alliance. Her small office on Earth became a coordination center for dozens of species that had never worked together before. "We call ourselves the Independent Alliance, she announced at a hastily organized press conference. "We are the species that the major powers overlook, the ones whose votes don't matter in Federation councils. But we are still people, and we believe in standing with those who need help." The major powers were not pleased with these developments. On Zephyria Prime, the Emperor's Council met in emergency session. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled a quarter of the galaxy for 3,000 years. They were not used to being challenged by upstart humans and their ragtag alliance. "This cannot be allowed to continue," declared High Chancellor Thexuri. "If minor species begin acting independently, it threatens the entire galactic order." But their options were limited. Public opinion was turning against them. Their own citizens were asking uncomfortable questions about why they had abandoned the Volani, while primitive humans had risked everything to help. The Altarian Republic faced similar problems. Their democratic ideals looked hypocritical when compared to humanity's actions. Citizens were demanding investigations into why their government had refused to help dying innocents. Even the normally isolationist Centauri Collective found themselves forced to respond. Their reputation for wisdom and compassion was in ruins after their silence during the Volani crisis. President Woo Jin Kim of Earth received a personal message from the Galactic Federation's High Council. They wanted to meet. After decades of treating humans as junior partners, they suddenly wanted to negotiate as equals. The meeting took place on Kepler 442b itself. Federation leaders arrived expecting to find a primitive world recovering from disaster. Instead, they found a thriving planet where human and Volani technology had merged into something entirely new. Taimin greeted the Federation delegation, personally. The great Volani leader stood tall and proud, his crystal skin now bearing beautiful spiral patterns where the plague scars had healed. He was no longer the dying leader begging for help. He was the representative of a people who had survived genocide and emerged stronger. "Welcome to New Harmony," he said, using the name the Volani had given to their restored world. "I hope you have come to make amends for your abandonment of my people." High Counselor Dex Thari of the Federation shifted uncomfortably. She had expected gratitude, not accusations. "The Federation acted according to established quarantine protocols," she said stiffly. "The Federation acted out of fear and political convenience," President Woo Jin Kim replied, standing beside his Volani ally. "You knew the hegemony had created a bioweapon. You chose to let it work rather than confront the perpetrators. The trial of the hegemony leadership became the most watched legal proceeding in galactic history. For the first time, a major power was being held accountable for genocide. The evidence was overwhelming. Dr. Min Seo Choi's research had proven that the crystal blight was an artificial weapon. Communications intercepts showed the hegemony's intent to murder the Volani for their mineral resources. Fleet Commander In Ho Kang stood trial as a war criminal. His defense was simple. He was following orders from his superiors. But the galaxy was no longer willing to accept that excuse. The Independent Alliance provided prosecutors and witnesses. Human lawyers worked alongside Volani legal experts, Kirathi, hive speakers, and Nautilan depth judges. It was the most diverse legal team in galactic history. "The defendant claims he was following orders," said Prosecutor Yang Mi Lee from Earth. "But there are some orders that no civilized being should follow. The order to commit genocide is one of them." The trial lasted for months. Every day brought new revelations about the hegemony's crimes. They had used bioweapons on 3 other worlds. They had enslaved entire populations. They had turned war into a business, profiting from the suffering of others. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all charges. The hegemony of Vex was disbanded. Their leaders were sentenced to life, imprisonment. Their military was broken up and distributed among their former victims. But the real change went deeper than one trial. The galaxy had been forced to confront its own moral failures. The major powers could no longer claim to be civilized while ignoring atrocities. Dr. Minseo Choi received the Federation's highest scientific honor for her work developing the plague cure. But she used her acceptance speech to challenge the entire galactic community. "Science means nothing without compassion," she said to the assembled delegates. All the advanced technology in the galaxy couldn't save the Volani. What saved them was simple human decency and the willingness of many species to stand together. The Galactic Federation was reformed. The new constitution included protections for smaller species and requirements for mutual aid during crises. Humans were granted full membership with voting rights equal to any other species. But perhaps the most significant change was cultural. The galaxy had learned that being old and powerful didn't automatically make you right. Sometimes the newest voice in the room spoke the greatest truth. Captain Mira Seo stood on the bridge of the Harmony, the first joint human-Volani exploration vessel. The ship was beautiful, combining human engineering with Volani crystal technology. It was faster and more advanced than anything either species could have built alone. Her mixed crew of humans, Volani, and independent alliance members was ready for their first mission. They had received a distress call from the edge of the galaxy. Another species was in trouble. Another world needed help. "Set course for the Theta sector," Captain Mira ordered. "Maximum speed." As the Harmony jumped to hyperspace, she thought about how much had changed. 3 years ago, humanity was considered too young and weak to matter in galactic affairs. Now they led an alliance of dozens of species, all united by the simple belief that everyone deserved help when they needed it. The galaxy had abandoned the Volani to die alone, but humanity had declared, "We stand with you." Those 4 words had changed everything. Now whenever someone called for help in the darkness between the stars, they could count on hearing those same words in response. The galaxy had learned what it meant to be truly civilized, and it all started with 12 human ships and the courage to do what was right.